Hello everybody! So now we're talking about frequency distributions, and we're going to use this set of data to construct a frequency distribution. On the math test, the scores of 16 students were, and I'm not going to read that list to you, there they are, you can see them. Use 4 classes beginning with a lower class limit of 60 with a class width of 10. So first thing what we need to do is we need to label what our columns are going to be. So the first one is grades. These are test scores, so let's call these grades, or you can write test scores, whatever you want to write there. And then this is a frequency distribution, so we're going to write frequency. Now it says use 4 classes beginning with a lower class limit of 60. So first class has a lower class limit of 60 and a class width of 10. So if our lower class limit is 60, class width is 10, our next lower class limit is 70. And then the next one is 80. And then add 10 again, and then we have 4 classes. That last lower class limit will be 90. Now, we need to decide where does this class end? Looking at the 70, what's the whole number that's less than 70? Because we're looking at whole numbers here, we're not dealing with decimals, so the whole number less than 70 is 69. So again, we can use that class width to find our next one, 69 plus 10. That would be 79 plus 10 is 89 plus 10 is 99. Okay, so now the frequencies. We need to know how many of these values are going to go into that class that's 60 to 69. How many go in that class that's 70 to 79? That's the frequency. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to count them. And I have found that the best thing to do as I'm counting them is to mark them out. So I'm looking for things in the 60s right now. So that's 1. Oh, I only got 1. And that way, if I mark it out, once I get to the end, I'll know whether or not I missed one, because I know I marked them out as I used them. So now let's look for 70s. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 in the 70s. Counting the 80s now. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm going to be counting the values that occur in the 90s. So in the 90s, 1, 2, and I have 2. Okay, so now we have built a frequency distribution. We're going to use this data to build a relative frequency distribution and a cumulative frequency distribution. So we may flip back to this slide or write this information on another slide so that we have the information to use it for those other values, for those other tables. So remember, 1942. So I'm going to go over to the side and I'm going to write 1942 real quick, because I'm going to be using those values. Now this time we're going to create a relative frequency distribution. Okay? So relative frequency distribution, 4 classes beginning with a lower class limit of 60 with a class width of 10. So that part doesn't change. We're still going to call it grades, but this time we're going to call it relative frequency. Okay? The classes have not changed. It's going to go 60, 70, 80, 90, and then up to 69, 79, 89, and 99. Now, to find those relative frequencies, we are going to take the frequency of that class, divide by how many total scores we have, which was 16, and I want to write these as percentages. You can write your relative frequencies as decimals or percentages. I'm going to write them as percentages, so I'm going to multiply by 100 each time. And then I'm going to do 9 divided by 16 times 100, 4 divided by 16 times 100, and 2 divided by 16 times 100. And remember that 1, 9, 4, and 2, those came from the previous example where we were just doing the frequency distribution. Those were the frequency of each class. We used those to find the relative frequency. So now, 1 divided by 16 times 100, I'm not rounding anything here, I'm going to keep those decimals, that's 6.25%. 9 divided by 16 times 100, 56.25%. 4 divided by 16 times 100, 25%. And then 2 divided by 16 times 100 is 12.5%. Okay, so now we have our relative frequency distribution. Again, keep those numbers in your head, 1942, as we switch to the next one. Going to write those out to the side. Now we're going to create a cumulative frequency distribution. The classes are going to work a little bit differently for the cumulative frequency. We're still going to label it grade, and we're going to label it cumulative frequency. The way we do the cumulative frequency, I'm going to go back one, is we start by looking at the second class. We want to say less than that second class value, okay, that lower class limit of the second class. So my first class is going to be less than 70. And then we're going to go to less than the next lower class limit, and that would be 80, and less than the next lower class limit, which was 90. And I'm looking at the previous slide for all of these. It was less than 70, less than 80, less than 90. Now what would that next one be? There was a class width of 10, right? So the next one would be less than 100. Okay, now we want to know what values were less than 70. You can either go through and count them. Those are all the values that are in the 60s, right? Or you can use the previous value that you found for the bin of 60 to 69. So there's one value that is less than 70. So now that was 60 to 69, 70 to 79. You have less than 80 as your next class on this cumulative frequency. So if these two values were both less than 80, then 9 plus 1 is 10. Or you could go through and count all your 60s and your 70s in your list up here. Either way you want to do it is fine. So I'm going to write a 10 over here. Less than 90. That would be any grade that was 89 or below. Well, that third class there, that was from our previous table, that was 80 to 89. That means anything in those three would be less than 90. So 1 plus 9 plus 4, that's 14. So our cumulative frequency for that one is 14. So are you getting the gist now? We can just add the frequency from the next class each time to get the less than. So for less than 100, we're going to do all of them 1 plus 9 plus 4 plus 2, and that's going to be 16.